So before we started, I wanted to show off my new t-shirt from Mick Thinks Tiny. I was on Mick's podcast the other day on her YouTube channel, and it was a great experience. So I wanted to give a thank you for my shirt. I love it. On to today's video. So if you've joined me before, you already know this, but if you are new, welcome to my channel. My name is Brooke Carlock. I just came out with a book that is called Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to. Right there. And I thought, since this is release week, I would make this video kind of talking a little bit about what the book is about and kind of do little mini videos about some of the things that you will find inside the book. So I wrote the book after I lost my dad, my stepmom, my mom, and my 10-year-old daughter, Libby, within a 1.5 year time span. And I have a bunch of other videos where I talk all about that. But today what I want to focus on is kind of why I wrote the book. When I was first grieving, I had a lot of trouble finding grief support that was what I was looking for. So for me, what that meant was I was looking for something that was not overly depressing. Like I needed to feel like there was a little bit of hope on my grief journey. I mean, if you lose a child, it's the worst thing in the world that can happen to you. And I was at the lowest point in my entire life and didn't really want to go on. And I was just looking for any sort of lifeline to cling to that would give me hope that my life could at some point get back to a sense of normalcy. And so I wanted to write something that acknowledged the reality of how terrible grief is, but also to provide some hope that it does get better, even though it's really difficult. The other thing I was looking for was secular grief support, because I'm not religious myself. So that was something that I struggled to find. And honestly, there's not a lot of it out there. So if you're looking for grief support that does not have a lot of religion, then my book might be helpful for you. That does not mean that my book isn't going to be helpful for people who are religious. My book is basically, it's just kind of like the nuts and bolts, bare-boned, like simple, practical things that you can do to help your grief. And there is plenty of room for any type of belief that you have or religion that you follow to work into the system. It's just that for me in particular, and for anyone who is not religious, it's something that you can look at that will not have those things in there. The other thing that I really wanted to do with my book was to tell my story and give you examples that I used in my own life. So my story is spread throughout the book. And my point in doing that was to show you that I have been there and I understand what grief is like on many, many levels, just to give you that hope and that suggestion that I'm no one special. And like I tell people, I was just a middle-aged, overworked, suburban working mom. And then life threw a million curveballs in my direction. And from that point on, my life was completely different. And I had to figure out how to deal with that. So I like to use my own story as a way to show you that if I can get to the point where I feel like my life doesn't suck, then you can too. It is possible for anyone to get there. And then through all my research, it's been years, so I have just kind of gathered together all the things that were helpful for me. And I came up with, and I hate to even call it this, but I call it the trust system, TRUST, because I'm an English teacher and I like, mnemonic words. I like to make things easy to remember for my students. And when you're in grief, your brain's all over the place. It's hard to remember things. So I figured something like the trust system would be easy to remember. I do not want to make it sound like I came up with some groundbreaking system. I hate even calling it a system, honestly, because there really is no system or program or anything that you can go through that's going to magically make your grief better. Grief is not one size fits all. So I say that over and over again in the book, that even though I'm giving you this supposed system, you can take what works for you out of it, and that's great. You can disregard the stuff that doesn't work for you, and that's great too. Okay, so that's the basics of the book. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the trust system because people ask me about that a lot. Obviously, I can't go through the entire book. So what I thought I would do is for the next few weeks, just go through each of the letters in the trust system and talk about what they are specifically, and some of the exercises and different chapters in the book are that go along with that part of the system. So the first letter is T. So the T in the trust system stands for tell your truth. The tell your truths section is exactly what it says. It is all about honesty and being honest with how you've dealt with grief in the past and things that have happened to you in the past, and then taking a look at honestly telling your truth about where you are right at this moment and things that you need to improve. So one of the first things that I talk about doing in the Grief Sucks book is a loss history. So looking back at the things that have happened in your past where you have had to deal with some sort of grief. It doesn't necessarily have to be the loss of a person. And I find that if you look back at those things, at the history, it will kind of inform the way that you look at dealing with grief right now. So for example, maybe you were someone where, you know, if somebody in your family died, it was kind of hushed and people didn't talk about it. And, you know, if you were a little kid, you were shushed. You didn't hear people discussing the death. You know, people didn't use the word dead. It was passed on. So something like that. It kind of, the way that you dealt with grief in the past and people dealt with grief around you informs how you feel about the grieving process right now. One of the other things that I do, once you look at the history, you look at the here and now. And with that, I kind of have you go through and rate how you are feeling in different categories in your life right at this moment. I actually have like a rating scale that you use that's like the suckiest, like this is terrible right now. And this is okay. It doesn't totally suck right now. And that's just to take a look at where you need to improve. So are you doing great in like the physical, healthy eating, getting exercise area, but you are terrible in the support system, like you're totally introverted, not really talking to anyone, not communicating with anybody, then we would look at working on making little step-by-step improvements in the categories where you're not doing so well. It's kind of like a grief state of the union, for lack of a better term. Now, for you, it might feel like everything sucks right now, and that is completely valid. It is just looking for places where you can just take little baby steps to move forward, because there is magic in even that tiny little movement. And I know when you are in the depths of grief, trust me, I get it. The idea of forward momentum can feel like trying to climb freaking Mount Everest in flip-flops. It is totally daunting and overwhelming depending on where you are in your grief. And I get that. That's why in the book, I am all about teeny, tiny little steps and keeping things realistic and focusing on the basics. So along with looking back at your past, looking honestly where you are right now, another big part of telling your truths is the telling part. And it is telling your grief story and telling it over and over and over again. And one of my favorite sections of the book is when I talk about telling your grief story and how for me, it was like I kept telling the story of what happened to me. And if I'm just focusing on Libby's death, I told the story over and over of how she died and what happened. And you can say it over and over again. And then eventually it's a story, it's a story, it's a story. And then boom, at some point it is going to hit you like, holy shit, my person died. And it is going to knock you down.
Okay. And right smack in the middle of that next sentence, my internet died and hasn't been able to be fixed because it fried the box where the cable was plugged in, and I have no Wi-Fi at all at my house. So welcome to my classroom where I have Wi-Fi. I'm going to record the rest of the video. I am sorry about the quality, and the sound is probably terrible, but I just wanted to get this finished so I can get it uploaded for you guys this week. It's not late. So as I was saying, you will tell your story over and over again, and then boom, it will hit you that what happened truly happened, and it will knock you on your butt. But it's a step that has to be taken. Last section that I wanted to cover in the tell your truth part of T, the trust system, is there's a section about figuring out whether things that you are doing are sabotaging your grief journey. And I don't want to get into all of them, but there are a couple of things. I actually have a video on it. I'll see if I can link it. It'll be up here. About are you sabotaging your own grief journey? So that's something that you all also want to be honest with yourself about. And that's obviously not everything because it's a whole big section of the book, but those are kind of the basics that I wanted to introduce you to as far as the T, tell your truth section of the trust system. So just so you know, the rest of the trust system, we'll be talking about the other letters in other videos, but R stands for reach out and is all about communicating with other people and setting up your support system. U is unpacking emotions. So it talks all about the crazy roller coaster of emotions that you go through during grief. S is searching for meaning. So that is really, when I say searching for meaning, I don't mean to say that there is a meaning in the loss of the person that you loved, but it is finding ways to make meaning out of what is left in your life. And then the T, the last T, is transform your future. And that's really the bulk of the book is about how to transform your future into something that is looking so bleak and miserable, like you're never going to be happy again, to at least having hope that your life isn't going to totally suck forever. So that is the trust system in a nutshell. Like I said, you can kind of take and choose what works for you and what doesn't in the system. It's not like a prescription requirement or anything like that. It's just taking everything that I found that was helpful for me and just kind of putting it in one convenient place that I hoped would be helpful for you so that you don't have to go out and do all the research that I did. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. I am going to wrap it up because I know this is going to sound and look like crap, but like I said, I wanted to get it out there. So Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to by me, Brooke Carlock. It is available now wherever you buy books. There's also an audio book if you're not a reader. If you do get the paperback copy, it does have different things that you can write. So it has pages where you can write out your own things, like rating scales and little reflection sections for you to write in. So paperback would be my pick, but I also recorded the audiobook. So if you want to hear me talking at you for over 3 hours, and grab the audiobook. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the book or just anything in general. I always love hearing from you guys. If you could smash the like button for me, I would appreciate it. And if you are someone who's grieving or want to help someone who's grieving, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, where I come at you with hopefully lots of helpful resources and thoughts about the grief process. All right, sending love and hugs. I will see you guys next week. Take care.